Welcome to the Got Trauma Podcast with your hosts, Courtney K. and Monica Newland.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the Got Trauma Podcast. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Hello.
How's everybody doing today?
Pretty good. It feels like a Monday. It just dawned on me that today does not feel like Thursday.
It doesn't. No, I've been thinking it's been Friday all week. I'm like a day ahead.
Oh,
right.
No.
And
Today has been a week of Mondays.
Right? Right, exactly. I had mentioned I'm already experiencing dysregulation this morning. So that's why I'm bundled up with a sweater. I got my heater. It was on blasting. It's like 23 in here, but I can't seem to get warm and I'm wrapped in a blanket. But we're going to do this. Because that's part of healing is to powerhouse through this stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because oftentimes before we record these podcasts, one of us, like me and Courtney have had this back and forth for the last 6 months or so that we've been doing this. One of us usually feels off and we push through it. So maybe this time, is you, since you've been joining us for the last, quite a few episodes.
Oh, I didn't want to do this at all today. Just so we're clear.
No, see, I'm like, I feel like I'm in like, I'm in the zone. I'm in the zone.
In
today.
the zone, right?
I don't know. I was not feeling like that. I think maybe because I don't know. It was just, it's interesting you say the whole thing about dysregulation, because for me, I get flushed.
Right.
And then my blood pressure kind of spikes because I have anxiety. But it's not manifesting like my anxiety normally manifests. It's manifesting this very lethargic way where I just feel like I've got lead feet and I'm like, I can't do anything. Like everything seems to take this ridiculous amount of time to do. And I just don't want to do any of it. I
usually feel like that. And I've been sick for the last, like I've had a cold for the last couple of days. So yesterday and today, today really, I feel like normal again. But I've been sick since Sunday, and but usually I'm like, feeling just lethargic. And I have read that when you are healing and you're actually in that healing phase, it's very exhausting. Your body's letting go, it's releasing, and that you don't have that adrenaline that's been sort of keeping you going. So you tend to settle, and it's very exhausting, and it just takes, it's your body's changing and adapting, right? So I hope that there's, the surge of energy will come back at some point in the near future, though.
But the healthy energy.
Healthy, yeah.
Not the fight flight type of energy, but the healthy energy.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't want the fight or flight. But it's funny for me in moments like this, my brain, because of the health anxiety and OCD, like rumination, I'm like, it's cancer. It's cancer for sure. There's no doubt. Yeah. It's gotta be cancer of something. Don't know what, but it's there. That's why I'm tired. Has nothing to do with everything going on in my life. That is just crazy. Nope.
Yeah, well, It's because we catastrophize everything, right?
We
catastrophize, right? Yeah. So everything's got to be worst case scenario. So, my mind goes to that side, that the most extreme situation, that thankfully that's not the case. I don't believe for any of us today. So
self-preservation, right? It's all about the self-preservation.
Yes. So everyone, we are back with another episode. We obviously, you can see that we have B here joining us again because we are continuing with the Chronicles of Childhood Trauma, the child, the trauma, and the dysregulated adult. And we are featuring B, woman of faith. We have met through social media, which is so cool. And if you've caught some of the previous episodes, then we have been uncovering a lot of B's journey and, through childhood and now to today. So we are continuing this. This is a series of probably 5, 6 or so episodes. So we are sort of halfway through that right now. And I just wanted to do just a little quick introduction. B, she is a survivor, thriver, and overcomer on her healing journey and sharing her story. And she's also an author and writer and has been featured in several articles. Thank you so much again for joining us. This has been such a lovely little journey that we've been going on, and you're our first sort of featured guest. So it's been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you guys for giving me this opportunity for sure. You guys are amazing.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's what it's all about, right? We've created this sort of platform to talk about our stories, and now we're happy to be speaking with other people who are on their healing journeys and what they've been through. And, we feel a little bit less alone, of course, when we start sharing. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I definitely think the talk therapy is extremely beneficial. Sorry, there was a lot of saliva when I said that. So it was like, anyway.
This is why you should watch the episode on YouTube, so you get to see our beautiful faces and not just hear us talk.
Yeah. I beg to differ. I kind of like the mystery of not being seen, but I guess this isn't old school radio anymore and I have to get with the times. But so our last episode, we kind of left off with like you had a pretty profound moment there, B, with acknowledging a situation from your childhood with your foster mom, where it was like a moment that you realized that this woman truly loved you, and she was going to do everything she could to prove that to you. And that was sort of a really monumental moment for you. I'm just curious because, like you said, when you're going through this, you talk about it, but you didn't really ever feel the emotion of it. It didn't really hit you until that particular time you were explaining it. What's the process been like after that breakthrough?
Well, first, just to recap, I was notorious for temper tantrums that were extremely destructive, and prone to outbursts of violence, which put me in the category of being a high-risk child going into foster care. But given my previous home life and the violence and the abuse I was subjected to within that home life, and not having the opportunity to properly express and articulate and understand my emotions, it would come out in the temper tantrums and the rages and violent acts. So with that situation, I was amping up the game, and my foster mom reached out for help to understand how to help me, and was told to go put me in my room and wait it out. And several hours later, after I've completely demolished my room, but that turning point was I hit her on the way to the room, and she hit me back. Not hard, for clarity's sake, but enough to prove a point that what I did to her was wrong, and that she had a right to hit me back, and she said so. She's like, but you hit me. And then something in me clicked that was wrong and that I hurt her. So that was more of the realization that I actually loved this woman and I cared about this woman, and here I'm hurting her. I believe that would be like the first time I saw her cry after I had my temper tantrum and destroyed my room and then had to clean it up. And then she explained to me, not at that time because I was too young to fully comprehend and understand, but when I was older, that's when she explained to me that she didn't know what to do, and she was devastated, and she actually had to reach out for help herself to deal with me at that moment because she didn't know what to do. So as an adult, I've had the opportunity once again to kind of look back into that situation and see where the pivotal point of those changes happened in me, where I went, I hurt somebody I love. And she had a right to hit me back. Like that lesson was so valuable. And I think that's what cracked open the shell that I had myself locked into even more so. I'm going to get emotional.
Well, it is emotional as a parent, that tough love, that we hear about, that we talk about, when you're in the moment, it's very difficult to, sort of keep yourself under control, and you always are questioning whether or not you're making the right choice. It's just that heaviness as a parent that you feel. I mean, it's, you know, your mom made the best choice that she could in the moment. And luckily, you know, it was the right choice. Like hearing you look back on those moments and say that, like, that was actually a good lesson for me, because it clicked in your head that you do love this person.
Yeah.
This wasn't your intention. You were just, you know, of course you were young, you know, trying to process things, trying to understand life. Yeah, it would have been, I'm sure another chaotic moment in your childhood, but luckily this one was a happier ending.
Yeah. The one thing too about being a foster parent, they were under very strict rules of what levels of affection they were allowed to show.
Really?
Oh yeah. We weren't allowed to like, they had to have somebody present when we were being bathed. So there had to be 2 adults to make sure, right? Going to the bathroom. There was such high levels of rules and regulations being a foster parent back then. I don't know what things are like now. So for her, I think it was a concern. They weren't even allowed to take photographs. They're not supposed to, but they did.
Wow.
Right? It's like, this child comes
I
in
do
your
know that.
home, but you have to disconnect from that child actually being in your home and not have any evidence of that child being in your home, because you never know how long that child's going to be in your home for.
It's the same with adoption too, I believe.
Yeah.
There is sorry, did you guys hear that?
No.
Okay, good. I just worried it was going to come into the recording. Somebody sent me a stupid Facebook message. And it's just like pating. I'm like, that's annoying.
I didn't hear anything.
Okay, that's good. I totally lost my train of thought and I had a really important question. Now I'm upset about it.
But that's the difference between the adoption and the foster care. So see, I'm not super familiar with all of these things. When me and my husband were looking at going through to try to, you know, have a baby, and we looked at adoption only. We didn't go down the road of fostering. So I'm just learning, you know, that's, I guess, because they weren't guaranteed to be with, like, you weren't guaranteed to be with them for the rest of your life. So they have to treat you as like a caretaker as opposed to like a parent.
Well, there is fostering to adopt though too, right?
Right.
Like I believe that I just know from somebody that I know who adopted for the first little while until everything is like completely concrete, no pictures, no social media.
Gotcha.
Everything has to be kept kind of. And I think, I mean, it makes sense too, especially with social media. You would want to kind of keep things under wraps because in case, you know, that not knowing what their situation necessarily, like where they're coming from, you probably don't want to put them out there broadband for everybody to see and people to be like, oh my, you know, and then like the screenshots and sending people who shouldn't have photos and stuff like that. So that part I understand.
And that's a key point too, because they did bend the rules when it came to taking photos, because they knew that, like, especially for me, I was not, my photo wasn't taken that often. I don't have baby pictures or anything like that because the focus was on my sister and my brother, but not me. So when we came into care, like the very first day, they took a photograph, which is, you're not supposed to do that. But when we became permanent custody, that was 7 years of that court case. That was part of the outcome of that court case. When I was 14, that is when they were actually able to introduce us to the rest of the family. So we'd been in that home since I was 6.5 to the age of 14 already, without any introduction to the rest of the family. Maybe they saw photographs, you know, but we never actually got to know them until I was 14, because at this point, we are their children. That's like another key point too. Like, I did give my foster parents a solid run for their money when I first got into that house. I was defiant. I was belligerent. I wasn't really complacent, you know, like I fought tooth and nail in every which way I could to just be defiant and not listen. And part of that breakthrough was with my foster mom in that hallway going, you hit me, you know, I'm going to hit you back. That I have a right to do that. Now I'm defending myself. You know, I love you, but you can't do this to other people. And I went from calling them, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith to mom and dad.
Wow.
that was a massive breakthrough for me to go, they are my mom and dad. I love them like my mom and dad. And I've given my first example of what a mom and dad is, which was nothing but abuse and violence and, verbal onslaught of garbage, to kind and loving and tender and patient and with firm hand. So there's that difference in discipline. Over here was violence and beatings. Discipline over here was, you need a timeout. We're going to discuss this.
Right.
Right? Whether you want to discuss it or not, we're going to discuss it because we're going to learn what these emotions are and where they're coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to have a lot of training in that as well. So, yeah.
Well, kudos to them. I don't think I could do it, to be honest. I would love to. I love children, but I don't think I could do it.
Yeah.
I have a hard enough time taming the two that I have. And a lot of that is also comes from, years of not knowing anything and then learning all these new things. And then you're like, am I applying it right? Am I allowing you to emotionally regulate? Are you taking advantage of me? La, 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 la. Like, I couldn't do it I couldn't do it, unfortunately.
I kind of struggle with that because I often wonder how I would be as a mother, because I don't have children of my own. I'm 49. That's not likely to happen at this point. But how would I be, if I were raising my own children? It is sort of on my bucket list, so to speak, because I've always thought of becoming a foster parent. It's a dream of mine to become a foster parent, to be able to give, another child who's had a shitty childhood an opportunity to experience what I experienced in foster care.
Oh, I love that. That's a beautiful sentiment, though.
Yeah.
Sentiment. What the hell did I say? Sediment? Sorry, that wasn't the right word.
It's all good. I think we understood what you meant. Sentiment.
I don't know if anyone else will. They'll be like, sediment? What? Sorry.
No, that's amazing. And I think, that's a wonderful thing for you to look into, because you are like you're, the perspective you have is unique, right? So, especially being able to, I'm a big fan of people who have been through it, are the ones qualified to help, right? The most.
Yeah.
And not to take away from professionals, but it's when people have been through it, a similar journey, I think there's a lot of value that you'd be able to have in shaping another one's life and showing them a totally different, world, essentially. Right.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will add one more quick thing. There are a lot of other people out there who have not had great experiences in the system, in the foster care system. There's been a lot of people out there that have been shuttled around, abused, neglected. That breaks my heart that there's families out there that want to be foster parents, but then they do this to children who've already gone through the ringer.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't even wrap my head around it.
Or the kids get put back with the biological parents that they should never be put back with.
That's my first go around, because I did not realize that I actually experienced foster care before this home. I remember the scenario that took place. I'm sorry for cutting you off. I'll just share this really quick. No. Because my biological parents were partiers. At this point, we were I believe we were evicted from our apartment, and now we're living in like a hotel motel thing. Well, my parents decided they were going to go out partying. They said they had a sitter. They left my sister and I, who are still in diapers, in that hotel room alone. I remember being in the crib. My sister was laying in the bottom of that crib. It was dark, and I'm the one screaming. And then like 3 or 4 people came crashing through the door of that hotel room. And that would be the first time, I'm quite sure the first time my sister and I had gone into foster care, because we were left in that hotel room by ourselves.
Wow. Yeah, police or whatever, the owners of the building coming in, and that's wow. Thank God.
There's a lot of interesting police raids that took place with police going after my dad for one reason or another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. An unhealthy individual, to say the
Very
least.
much so. Very much so. Because he came up. Sorry, did you have something to say before I?
No. I'm processing.
Yeah, because
I'm just thinking.
There was a few things that came about because maybe to give clarity on how skewed our thinking becomes as children when we're being traumatized and abused, the programming that happens and the things that take place that kind of shape us from that trauma. So when I say that I loved my biological father, people don't seem to understand why. And I mean, it was not a healthy love, obviously, because the love that I was introduced to was not love at all. It was abuse. But my father, so there was a time where we were in an apartment building. I know exactly which one we were in. And I started choking on a coin. And this is a man, like I said before, had tried to unalive me. But I'm choking on a coin, and he saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
So now I go from this violent monster to he's my hero. And then we fast forward, and there was another situation that happened within our apartment building, and it was a fire that broke out. And we're crawling on the floor down the hallway, and doors are being opened, and he's like manager of that building. And he pulled a guy out who was unconscious from his apartment out to the street. And he got a hero thing from the fire department and shit. Those are the fucked up things that I remember being you would do this for other people, but in the meantime, you're a fucking monster behind closed doors.
Yep. Yeah. So was he an addict? Like you said that they're partiers. Do you remember like drugs? Because I say that because that seems, in my experience, my mother's an addict. It was very much a roller coaster. It was like, was like, two completely different people. Like you wake up in the morning and she's like not high and not drunk or whatever. She's lovely as pie. A couple hours later, it's a totally different fucked up scene. Like it's so quick. So do you think that there was like addiction likely that played a role in all that?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say about the drugs. I would say, if anything, there might have been pharmaceuticals involved, but definitely alcohol. Alcohol was like consumed every day in that house.
Yeah.
That's like my household for sure. My mom would be two very different people. One time she'd be the most awful human being on the planet, and the next she'd be like, "Hey, do you want to come watch a movie with me and have snacks? And I bought your favorite snacks. You want to play a board game?" So you always had those pulls because you're like, well, this way that you treated me was not okay, but now you're being nice to me. And I guess you would refer to that as the love bombing, right? Like,
absolutely.
Sorry, there's a mosquito.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, especially growing up as a child, watching all of that. It's very confusing.
It is very much so. Like I said, he rescues one person. He saves my life after trying to unalive me. It really does add to the confusion of like, well, what are you then?
Yeah.
When you're a kid, you're like, well, what are you then? Every day you're beating on me. Every day you're abusing me. Every day you're calling me a whore. Your parties, you're passing me around like I'm like the chip dip to the chips or something like that. And then this other stuff comes into play. And I mean, people, you knew that people feared him. But at the same time, people highly respected him. Like when he died and his landlord and stuff at that point had sent me a message and I talked to him on the phone. They spoke so highly of him, it sickened me.
Yeah.
Because it was like, if you only fucking knew what he was and what he did. Because there's no changing that. Like, no. I don't know if he's ever molested other children after me. I don't even know if he had other children after me. Right? It's just one of those things.
Yep.
That fucks me up. Pardon my French, but it does.
No.
It fucks me.
Absolutely.
We like that word here. It's a good verb. It describes
That's
things
how we
well.
express ourselves.
Yeah.
That's how we express ourselves is when we swear. I'm usually the first to drop the F-bomb though.
Sorry, if you're wondering why I'm all like sketched out, it just like the sky just erupted here and it's like pitch black and it's now like hurricane rain and thundering in the background. So just...
Yeah, you're saying there's a storm coming in.
If I hide under the table, you know what's going on.
I was going to say, B, like one of the things that I have learned is that when, like, you're dealing with all this back and forth, you're a child. Of course, you feel like you question your own sanity. Like, I mean, you're a child. I mean, the most that you could understand of like what's happening. And then of course you feel crazy seeing this like back and forth, like black and white, Jekyll and Hyde, whatever you want to call it. Like it's so confusing and and you would like think that you're going crazy. And like, I know that I dealt with that for a really, really long time. And I think part of why we talk about things and like that, you know, because we're kind of healing, you start to remember these things and then you're like, oh, okay, that's why I have a little bit of that. Okay, that's why, you know, I'm uncomfortable with this. And then you start to sort of, and those are those triggers that we talk about, right?
Yeah.
Because as you're talking about, you're uncovering things and you're remembering things and you're recalling things from when you were very young. And it's you know, it's startling to hear the reality of what you and your siblings went through.
Do you know what it reminds me of? I think of like a ghost, like a scary movie where there's that scene where they go into the attic space and there's all the figurines that are covered with sheets. And it's like they're ripping off the sheets to see what they're trying to find, you know, and everything seems fairly like, oh, that's not it. And then all of a sudden there's that one and it's just like that terrifying snap. And you're like, whoa, there it is.
Yeah.
There's that thing that's haunting me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, that's just the vision that I got in my head.
I think that's why throughout the years, with some therapy under my belt, I'm learning more and more to, like, if I get triggered, to dig deeper into that trigger to figure out exactly what the catalyst is behind it, and face it head on. And if it happens again, I do the same thing. And then that power that it has over me becomes less and less.
Yeah.
And that the trigger also lasts less and less. Like I'm going to gain control over that. I'm not going to allow it to control me.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a big point of going through the therapy and talking about stuff is you're taking back that control and you're going, no, I'm going to diminish you. Because every time you fucking come up into my life, I'm going to squish you.
Yeah.
And eventually, you know, like it's never going to go away, but eventually you are not going to affect me anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's like how my brain just envisioned that, like the uncovering. It's like, okay, here's that scary thing. Now I've stood face to face with you. Now I will, like, your power isn't going to be nearly as big as it was when I didn't know what you were.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I know what you are. Now I can go, okay, I see you. You're no longer a surprise.
Yeah. When you've experienced such high levels of control and manipulation and, you know, not having a voice, not being able to stand in your power, and somebody constantly stripping you of that, it has a lifelong effect on you. And one thing that you know I recognized was I didn't have the power in my childhood. I was lorded over in my childhood. You know, you jump. You know, you jump off a bridge, go jump off the bridge. Whatever you're being told to do, you do. Now you're going into a foster care home and they have their rules and regulations, and you're learning gradually how to take that power back in a healthier environment. But now you're dealing with the Ministry of Social Services, where they're forcing you to see your abusers who continue to abuse you for the next 7 years every time there's the visitations. And they're getting away with it, using the legal system to continue to abuse you, using their lawyer to continue to abuse you, and trying to keep you suppressed and not have your power. I mean,
Awful.
there's a whole unfolding there of like, okay, I'm not putting up with any more of that. Nobody's going to take that power from me anymore.
Yeah.
I have a voice. I'm going to use it. If you don't like what's being said, there's the door. Keep walking.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you see that even from children and, teenagers, adults, is that, when we haven't had control over any aspect of our lives, we're so desperate to try to control things. So even,
Yep.
when you destroyed your room as a child, that was like the only thing at that moment you could control. So you
Absolutely.
controlled your space, you controlled, your items, your belongings or whatever, because you were so desperate to feel in control. And I mean, and that would have been, ongoing from, before you got with your foster parents, but even as adults, right? Like I know for myself, I almost suffocate situations to the point of where I'm trying to control them. I've picked up on this over the years. I'm like, why am I so like, intense about this situation? I'm like, oh, there's a link here.
Yeah.
And it's, it's related to something. And I don't do that in all aspects of my life, fortunately, but definitely there's like been some connections I've made where I'm like, wow, I really didn't have any control at that moment in my life. And now this is sort of bringing up that feeling again. And then I'm an adult, now I can control it. And it's just a good point that you brought up. And I think it's really very relevant for anybody who's been through some, abuse, abandonment, that sort of stuff, for sure.
Well, anything that's been out of their control, right? Like even people like like war vets and stuff like that, right? Like that PTSD. Ours is, complex post-traumatic stress disorder because it's a series of events as opposed to one particular, but it all kind of falls the same way as far as control goes. When you've experienced something where you're just like, it's so hard to explain, but I find like that's one of my biggest struggles and for me, it's emotional control. Trying to control everyone's emotions around me, trying to make sure that everybody's happy and flowy. And it's like, that's not real.
But that's very much related to your story, right? Like you did not have a voice, right? Your mother did not allow you to think, did not allow you to process your emotions without telling you how to process your emotions. So that makes a lot of sense to me that you're specifically relating that to like that emotional control. See, mine is I had no physical control over my environment and it was always very chaotic. So for me, I became very obsessive over certain aspects of my life as I got older, particularly when I had a family. Very much related to the lack of control that I lost as a child, and the
what are you walking into when
conflict.
you come home?
I think that manifests in more than one ways too in people's lives. When you don't have that control in your childhood environment, it once again has a hand in shaping how you operate in your everyday life, or even how you look after yourself physically. So we talked about OCD. I was extreme OCD in foster care. Like my mom could open up the closet and everything was freaking color coordinated. My room was pristine. Everything had a place. I knew when somebody was in there because if something moved, I knew something moved. They can try and put it right back in the same spot, but I knew that they were in there. She said, I would try and be a teenager and drop clothes on the floor, but as soon as you open the drawers, everything was color coordinated and lined up perfectly. And that was me keeping control over what's going on in here, because I had no control of what's going on here. So if I had my environment in control, then that helped settle this down.
Balance. And
then I battled anorexia as well. So it was another massive control thing. I'm a recovered anorexic. If I'm eating cake for breakfast, I went through I think the last bout that I had with anorexia, I was 32, 33 years of age.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was extreme. I was like a walking skeleton, but I thought I looked good.
I had that with, mine's like for myself. Making myself purging is one of the things that I do to control my anxiety. If it's really extreme, I will make myself throw up because for whatever reason, there is a relief in that release. It's it's the only way I can physically release this emotion I can't control. And like, I don't do it all the time, but I have noticed, like, it will be if I overeat or whatever the situation, there's almost this little voice in my head that's like, you need that, that's gross. It's just this like shit narrative that's going on. And it's usually compiled with other whatever anxiety I'm experiencing at that time. And it's like, nope, you got to get it out. Go get it out. And it's just this like full physical release. So it's strange.
So so you're saying, Court, that's like a bit about control as well. Like
it
that's
is 100%.
Something that you're able to control. So B, was that the same thing for you? It's kind of why you probably unintentionally went down this road, I'm sure.
Yeah. When I look back at my medical records, there was already issues with me, failure to thrive, maintaining food in my system and things like that. And I don't even think my foster parents were fully aware of the fact that I was battling anorexia. They just figured that I was wiry and thin and I was active and hyperactive. And they could see what I eat, but they didn't know what I was doing beforehand and what I was doing after. So big family meals, I would make sure that my system was fully loaded with laxatives.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And how old were you when this started?
I think the height that when it really took hold, I was probably in my early teens.
Yeah.
Is when it really took hold. I know that I had issues beforehand with food, but I think it was in my early teens where I just kind of went off the deep end. Whether it was because I was being bullied all through school, that was another thing that I needed to control. Like school was hell for me. So I think that just sort of amped up the whole, I was already kind of stepping into that role, not realizing what I was doing to myself because I didn't even know what anorexia was. It was just, I'm restricting my food intake. I'd have a cup of coffee and a piece of chocolate, or I'd have a cup of coffee. Coffee was like my staple. I would drink coffee like it's going out of style because I needed that energy because my body wasn't getting the sustenance it needed.
Right.
And if I'm feeling really low, I'll have that piece of chocolate or a couple crackers or whatever. And then big family meals would be, oh crap, I better prepare. And I'd probably spend a few days prior getting my body cleaned out with laxatives. Then the big meal comes and I've got all these laxatives in my system. I'm going to eat that big meal, but it's not going to stay because I got the laxative built up in there already.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's I can't imagine that mindset, especially at a young age. So because you said that happened until your 30s. So what happened in your 30s that you decided to make a switch?
I was working in the gym industry and I was hired as a personal trainer and a gym membership seller. Like I was selling the memberships as well. And first off, I'm surprised they freaking hired me considering the way I looked. I guess they thought that looked healthy and normal. But I had gone to the bathroom one day and it's one of those multi-stall bathrooms. And I went in and as I was opening the door to step out of my stall, I looked at myself in the mirror and another woman stepped out of the stall a few doors down. I looked at her in the mirror and I went, what the hell am I looking at here? Like this was skin pulled over bone, like sunken eyes. I was looking at a walking skeleton and I'm like, why the hell is she in here? This is not good. This is not good. This is not good. And I kid you not, I went from looking at her to I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw myself for the first time and I saw how sick I was. I didn't realize how badly I was damaging my body, and I didn't understand. Even though I worked in the gym industry, I did not believe myself to be anorexic. I never understood anorexia. And that was a pivotal point for me, was seeing her. And then my vision shifted and I saw myself for the first time. And I realized I was killing myself slowly. And then I didn't want that.
Mm-hmm. It's a change in perspective because you started to love yourself.
Oh yeah.
That was probably one of the first times you decided to love yourself, right?
I think the other strong point too was I was just coming out of my very first long-term abusive relationship, and my world was a disaster. Right after I walked out, I was homeless, to living in a shoebox, to living in my car, to couch surfing, to getting this job, trying to get my feet under me. And that, like I said, was my last serious bout of anorexia. And it was just like, no. And now I, weigh like a healthy 150 pounds, at least, probably a little bit more than that because I don't have a scale in here. And I eat
but
whatever
that's a
I
healthy
want.
weight for you. So like you're saying that
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It is. I went from weighing under 100 pounds to weighing what I weigh now.
Wow.
And it's all that mindset. I had to work on it. I'm working in the gym industry going, why would they even hire somebody like me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I started with the juice bar. I was like, if it's liquid going in and it's nutrients going in, I got to start with something. So I started going to the juice bar, and then the juice bar became more salads, more meat, more whatever.
Right. You started to build up.
Now. And I love my body more now, even at the height of anorexia, even at the height of when I was working out and a healthy weight and I was cut. Like, I'm happy in my body.
Yeah. I just, I love that this has come sort of full circle, because we started off this conversation with you sort of falling, realizing that you love your mom, and that was sort of a turning point. Like I said, I think that was probably a turning point for you to realize it was time to start loving yourself. And that's, I say this so much that, like, really, we don't learn about self-love enough, like in general, but especially as trauma survivors, we've had none of that. Exactly. We don't know what's normal because we've never been shown that healthy. We've never been able to watch it from somebody else, and we never been able to receive it. And when you make that choice to do something for yourself, that act of self-love, it's so empowering. And really, if you can get, it's hard to get to and it's work, but if you can get, those moments and it clicks, it's like, can obviously be the start of something that's, been obviously a huge change. It would be a huge transition for you. So,
well, when that perspective switches, right?
Yeah. Thank you for being honest about that, because that's a tough thing to,
when the perspective switches, all of a sudden, it's just a totally different overlook.
It's almost like mini awakenings.
Yes.
Yes. And when you're going through this healing process and you have all those mini awakenings and you're deepening that relationship with yourself, and I think that's key, is you're building a relationship with yourself. I'm not even going to say I'm not going to say you're relearning yourself, because you never had a self to start with. Right? When you've been abused as a child, you're basing your internal dialogue and your reality off of what those people put on you.
Yeah.
So now you're going through your adulthood going, well, who the fuck am I?
Yep.
And how do I discover who I am? And then start building that relationship with a new version of you, like you, not a new version, but you, who you actually. So
exactly.
The autonomy, right?
Yeah, I don't want to say you're relearning you, because if that programming is there, you got to get rid of that programming and discover who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Which is scary. That's kind of scary when you think about it, and you're like, who you thought you were your entire life, and you realize that those were just the masks that you had to wear to keep yourself in, in that mode of being accepted by everybody. And you were never happy for yourself. You were always happy vicariously through other people, because that's just how you were trained. As long as everyone else is happy, that means you're happy. And you're like, but am I actually really happy? Does this really serve me? And then when you look back at that, you're like, wow, the shit that I put up with that I didn't fucking care for.
Yeah.
That I just kept taking in and taking in and taking in, because I was like, well, as long as you're not jumping down my throat, treating me like shit, I guess we're all okay here.
Exactly.
Right? It's fucked.
Yeah.
Totally is. Totally is. It's an emotional circus that we have to get through.
It is, absolutely.
It's like a theme park, and it's only one roller coaster, and it starts to really fucking suck after a while.
Exactly right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're like, that's not what I signed up for. And it just keeps going. Yeah. No, absolutely. I want to just wrap it up there, because I think that's, I'm so happy that you shared that little piece. I didn't know any of that of your past. I think, hopefully some people who are listening, this is, not something that we've ever touched on, is that sort of like, we've talked a little bit about like self-harm, and I would put it as sort of in the same category a bit. But I just thank you for your openness and candidness with that,
it's
because I think that there's some really important pieces for people who maybe are going through something similar, or who are realizing maybe after listening to this that they're going through something similar. They're doing something to themselves that, is difficult. So I think we wrap up this episode there. We have a few more episodes still to do.
Right.
And we have lots, we have more to uncover for sure. But thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to share my story. I think there's going to be a lot of people out there that this will resonate with, not just my story, but yours, Monica, and yours, Courtney, and everybody else in the community that we've been building on. The things that shape us that we don't even realize shaped us, and the after effects of all that trauma, and having to peel back those layers and really dig deep to be healthy and whole. Right?
Yeah,
like, exactly.
Are we ever going to experience that? It's a lifelong process.
It is a lifelong process, and that's, I think, something that is really important to keep reiterating, because it's something that just has to be accepted. There is no pill, there is no cure, there is no waking up one day and going, my life is perfect, la la la. No, it's not the way it works. It's just longer periods of peace.
Exactly.
That's, in my opinion. So.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. I'm taking it all and I'm processing it all. But ladies, let's wrap it up there, and we'll see all of our listeners in the next episode.
Sounds good, ladies. I'll talk to you guys later. Much love. Blessings, everybody.
Welcome to the Got Trauma podcast with your hosts, Courtney K. and Monica Newland.